not that complex. I think they're rather simplistic. And I think the answers are not complex, because I believe that if we had people who were interested in following the rule of law, which is the Constitution, we could find our answers and avoid our difficulties. The difficulty is there's so little respect for the Constitution today. The Constitution is neglected by the Congress, it's neglected by the executive branch, and it's certainly neglected by our courts. Just think of how we have allowed our courts to write laws. Think of how we have allowed our administrative government in the executive branch, the committees and all, just writing laws that have the force of law. The agencies have no right to write law under the Constitution. Then Congress, when they're supposed to have responsibility, they totally neglect it. They ignore their responsibility. So we don't have much consideration for being strict adherence to the rule of law. And my belief is that if the American people want to change, they ought to change the law. But if they can make the Department of Education exist and then double it, and it doesn't even say we're allowed to have it, then we're in serious trouble. And I think that's the kind of system that you're inheriting. We ignore the rule of law when it comes to the monetary issue. One of the reasons why we spend and then we tax and then we borrowed, then we have that residual left. And if nobody will loan us the money, we're just going to print it. And I think that's wrong. I think it's an issue that nobody else talks about, and yet it's going to be an issue of your age. And you will and are already suffering those consequences. Does anybody know what has happened to the cost of education compared to 10 years ago till today? Ask your parents if you don't know. And what do you think your kids are going to pay? That's inflation. Inflation isn't the prices going up, it's the value of the dollar going down. The Constitution is very clear about it. There's not to be a central bank, and only gold and silver can be legal tender. So I don't even believe in the Federal Reserve System. We have moved in the direction where national sovereignty is no longer a big issue with those two.
Yes, sir. I'm in a banquet right now.
So if it comes to foreign policy, immigration policy, or monetary policies, the leadership on both sides tragically are in cahoots with it, and those who believe in less government and maximum amount of freedom are sort of left out. Some people pander to others, and they give rhetoric in the direction of certain people, but policies never seem to change. And that is what I would expect your generation is going to have to do. Not because all of a sudden they're going to listen to us and to you, but out of absolute necessity, because it won't continue. You just can't continue to just print money and pay bills. Right now, the Chinese could bring us to our knees in a minute if they wanted to. And they owe $1 trillion of our debt. If they dumped it, yesterday, this week, the market's been very precarious. You know, the stock market's rocky, and we still, as far as I can see, still in a bear type of market since started in the year 2000. And so the NASDAQ is only 50% of what it used to be, which means it's not a healthy climate. And the amount of debt sitting out there is very, very risky. But national sovereignty to me is a very important issue, and that has a lot to do with our immigration problems. And it's probably one of the biggest issues of our day. And sometimes it's used to make a lot of noise about it, and other times it's very, very real. But my approach to the immigration problem is slightly different than others, although it overlaps quite frequently. But my idea is that if you subsidize something, you get more of it. So I want to take away all the subsidies for illegal immigrants.
Yes.
That means that a state could never be compelled by the federal government to provide free medical services, free education, and force them to be bilingual. As an obstetrician, I had been required to arrive in the emergency room within 30 minutes or be fined by the federal government to deliver illegal babies, which became automatic citizens. So we, the people, taxpayers, paid for that medical care, and all of a sudden they became legal citizens. I think that's a confused understanding of the 14th Amendment. I want to clarify that either by legislation or amending the Constitution to say that there should be no automatic citizenship. The other incentive that brings a lot of workers into this country with their families is the fact that they can anticipate and have anticipated, and unfortunately, I'm afraid correctly so, that there's going to be amnesty, which if we had the right kind of president and the right kind of Congress, there would be no amnesty.